So g'day, it's Jason Archer here from AbascusBio, and this is part of the Beef and Lamb Genetics, New Zealand Genetics Beef Breeder Forum. And on the line on Skype, I've got Andrew Cromie with me from ICBF. G'day, Andrew. How are you?
Oh, great. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Good morning or good evening as it is.
Good evening as it is for us here at the moment. So ICBF, Andrew, what does that stand for? What do you do? Who are you?
Okay, so ICBF stands for Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, and we're a cooperative of industry organisations that came together about 20 years ago to establish ICBF. So the main shareholders in ICBF are the farm organisations. They have 46% of the shares, and then the cattle breeding service organisations, which then have 54% of the shareholding, and that's spread across AI, recording organisations, and herd books, or breed associations, as you might know them in New Zealand. And then we also have, they make up the board, those individual stakeholders, and then we also have a board representation from the Department of Agriculture.
So cattle-wise, this is a beef breeding conference, but you cover beef and dairy. Do you want to just give us like the brief snapshot of what is your cattle industry, both beef and dairy, look like, and how do they sort of work together in some way over there?
Okay, so so ICBF cover dairy and beef cattle, as you said. We have, first of all, people at the forum will be very familiar with Ireland and green grass, and pint of Guinness, and you've got all these nice images of Ireland. And,
absolutely.
We operate a seasonal production system, quite similar to New Zealand in that regard. So cows calving February, March time, and weaning calves in the months of October, and dairy cows, milking through to December. And we like to take a break at Christmas time, So in terms of sort of numbers, about 1.5 million dairy cows now. That number, since the quotas were removed a few years ago, has been increasing quite significantly. Our numbers of dairy cows, have grown from about 1.2 million to 1.5 million really over the course of the last 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
So really significant increases in dairy cow numbers. Our beef cow herd has largely stayed fairly stable at about 1 million suckler cows. It's maybe dropped slightly in the last couple of years, but about 1 million suckler cows. And then as you inferred there's a considerable crossover between our beef and dairy herds as well, because maybe a bit different than New Zealand, quite a proportion of beef is used in the dairy herd.
Yep.
So off the calf crop coming from dairy cows, so I talked about the 1.5 million dairy cows, there's certainly 600,000-700,000 beef calves coming off the dairy herd as well.
Yep.
So that gives us a national cattle kill of per year 1.6-1.7 million. Obviously there's some live exports from the weanlings, the suckler side, so a national cattle kill of about 1.6-1.7 million. And the typical breeds that are represented there on the beef side, first of all, on the dairy side, it's not like New Zealand in the sense of we still are 92-93% really black and white Holstein Friesian.
Right. Yep.
But then the main beef breeds that are used are really the continental breeds in the suckler herd. So you really, it's the Charlie, the Limousin, the Simmental, and also the Angus and Hereford. And then obviously the Angus and Hereford are used very heavily then on the dairy herd as well. And it's probably noteworthy that the breed that has maybe shifted most in the last number of years has been the Angus, and it's on the back of the really Angus and Hereford to a lesser extent, on the back of the really strong branded schemes that there are around the Angus and Hereford beef, and that as a market opportunity mainly into Ireland and into the UK mainly.
Yeah. Okay. And so your beef cows, are they straight Angus, straight Hereford, straight Shirley, or are they crosses with dairy?
That's another aspect that's interesting to Ireland is, we have this really a multi-breed, crossbred suckler cow population, the main breeds of which I've just touched on there, those 5 breeds, the Charlie, the Limousin, the Simmental, Angus and Hereford. So it's a real combination of, and So it's certainly not, as you sense or as you might think, is it a purebred? No, it's a mix of those breeds, and it's typically our typical performance, and this has been one of the challenges that we had, and it's in many ways the background to the beef genomics scheme was, our industry had been is so focused on exporting, and no different to yourselves, we export 85% of our beef and dairy product. So when we're export focused, and you know this as well, we tend to focus on the output traits, and the challenge for that was, we ended up with suckler cows that were too big. We were driving out carcass weight and carcass conformation, really, and that was driven by the continental breeds, because they were able to deliver on that. And but as a consequence, we got cows that were too big, that didn't have the required milk. Key metrics such as calves per cow per year had really slipped.
Yep.
So for 1 million suckler cows, we were actually only generating about 800,000 calves, live calves, at sort of at 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
These are if we talk about a suckler beef industry, I mean, these are metrics that we absolutely knew and understood we needed to turn around, both from an economic efficiency perspective, but also from a climate efficiency perspective. I mean, we've these suckler cows, and they're only producing 0.8 calves per cow per year. It's not a good place to be from a beef industry perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And where are you going to go, and how are you trying to do that?
Yeah, so that was a real challenge, and it still is a challenge, and in fact the challenge is getting even bigger, because now we're starting to, we're having to move our whole beef industry away from where it has been traditionally, which has been, these easy to measure and visible traits, to these really hard to measure and invisible traits, and to be able to do that, and to do that more accurately and more quickly, obviously we've been utilising technologies such as genomics, and really that was the background to the beef genomics scheme. We understood that the traits we needed to improve in our suckler herd were it was milk, it was for fertility, it was we needed to bring down the size of these cows, we needed to improve weaning efficiency, weight of the calf relative to the weight of the cow. So and we needed to do it quickly. So, and that was where, the opportunity of overlaying genomics into and it's effectively, it's an environmental program. I mean, you're well aware of the challenges, and no different to yourselves, and it's increasing now in terms of the challenge, or the emphasis or the focus on it in New Zealand with your new government and the Green Party being involved. I mean, there's a huge focus now globally on climate and environment. Now, we were probably, I wouldn't say quick to move on it. The pressure was on Ireland quick. The pressure has been on Ireland for quite a number of years in this space, because, if we look at our sort of our carbon emissions, it's about 60 million tons of CO2 equivalents per year, and agriculture makes up about a third of that.
Right. Yep.
And that's really because, we're so export focused with number of cows relative to other industries, etc. So there's been a big focus on agriculture, and I suppose in that context within the EU, and you're well aware again within the EU, a big focus on climate and environment within the EU.
Yep.
And Ireland, we're right at the bottom of that league, as a consequence of the heavy dependency we have on agriculture. So that really gave us the impetus, or we understood the need we had to really start to focus on not just economic efficiency, but also climate efficiency in the context of our agriculture and our agricultural systems.
Yeah.
And that was the genesis for the beef genomics scheme, which was established then in 2015 as a co-funded program between our Department of Agriculture and the EU.
Yeah, and so to move into reducing your climate emissions, which I think is a very interesting thing to do, is that done by some fancy technology to measure gases, or are you actually really just looking at the fundamental underlying productivity type traits? Do you have to give up productivity to improve climate outcomes, I suppose is the question?
No, and I mean, that's the key point, and that's where there's the real win-win, and okay, initially it was a bit of a hurdle to get over that one and get people bought into, because people's immediate reaction when they're challenged around climate and environment is one of, here's another means to take money out of my pocket, as a farmer.
Yep.
But the terrible irony of it is, by doing the right things in the context of our breeding strategies and breeding programs, we're actually, we're completely consistent with the whole climate and environmental efficiency argument, because, when we look at the traits that really drive environmental efficiency, well, it's the exact same traits. I mean, we want a smaller cow that eats less, produces less methane, but actually converts that into a heavier calf. So it's the classic principle of more from less, which is completely consistent with what beef farmers want and what dairy farmers want.
Yeah.
They want to minimise down that cost of feed, but they want to maximise out their output, and they also want to minimise their cost of production. So traits such as calves per cow per year, age at first calving, milk, these are all the maternal traits that are so critical in the context of profitability, but then also climate efficiency. So there's a real win-win there.
Yeah. So just this genomics program, just tell us a little bit about how it works in practice. What does it mean? What does the farmer have to do? What do they get? How do the decisions get made?
So there are about 24,000 farms involved in the program, 550,000 cows. So basically, it's a 6-year program. Farmers sign up to it. They have to complete various actions. On completing various actions, they get a payment. If they complete all the actions in a given year at the end of the scheme, the payment works out at about 90 euros per cow per year.
Okay.
The average herd size of participants in the scheme is we have small herds in Ireland, picture the west of Ireland, fragmented farms. And in Ireland, we have, unlike New Zealanders, there's a long affinity with the land as such, so very little movement of land, and ownership of land is pretty much fixed. So you have a lot of these small fragmented farms. But typically then 20 cows, and then they have to complete various actions, and actions, the examples of actions, it's good data recording.
Yep.
So we're asking them to record information around whether it's, obviously the SAR of the calf, and we verify that with genomics afterwards. I'll talk about that. But things like calving survey, calf vigor, and any scar, any pneumonia, then you're into the cow in terms of the cow or milk score, any functionality, stock bulls, any bulls, or score for a few traits, and all of this is farmer recorded traits. And I know, again, when we kicked off this scheme, a lot of people were very skeptical about the quality of data that you could get from farmers, and would have just become a box ticking exercise to claim down some money. Obviously, we put quality control checks in there.
Yeah.
So if you don't record good quality data, you don't get your payment. But more critically, what we find is we get really, really good heritabilities. Like, at the end of the day, farmers know the cows that they have milk and the cows that don't have milk.
Yeah.
And it's in their best interest to tell us the cows that don't have milk. So those cows are going to get, they're going to get nailed in the context of the genetic evaluation, which makes it easier for the farmer then to, get those cows called out with a better replacement. So, So, I mean, that's the data recording aspect, and then there's a genotyping aspect. So they have to genotype a proportion of the herd each year, cows and calves, or potential new replacements coming in. So what typically will happen then is, and what's happening now, it took us a few years to build up the training population, etc. But the farmers will be genotyping their heifer calves and their weanling heifers on an annual basis, and we're sending out then the genomic evaluations to those animals at, say, about 6 months of age, and then the farmers are using the genomic evaluations to select their replacement females based on that replacement index. So that's another action, and then there's a couple of more actions around replacement strategy, so that they're only bringing in higher genetic merit females. That's a requirement. and also if they're buying AI, to use an AI or buying a breeding bull, that again has to meet a minimum in terms of genetic merit. And then there's a few actions around knowledge transfer and participation in knowledge transfer programs, and also an action around climate or carbon benchmarking. So we have a hair benchmarking program here operated by Teagasc and Borbia, which facilitates us to take an annual measurement of effectively the carbon credentials of the farm, using various input parameters.
Yeah.
So these are all relevant actions which are then allowing this scheme to gather a lot of data, generate genetic evaluations, make genetic gain, and also help us benchmark improvement right throughout the program.
So Andrew, like doing the back of the envelope sums, if I've got 20 cows and I'm getting paid €90, which is about $150 New Zealand, I might get $3,000 in my pocket per year, and I'm going to be doing some actions that are going to help make Ireland's cattle herd more sustainable. Does your government view that as just a straight subsidy, or is it actually an investment in your future?
Yeah, and I think in fairness, that's where our government has, certainly moved, and the whole thinking has moved significantly in that regard. And I'd acknowledge that in the past, these investments were viewed as they weren't investments, they were subsidies, but it has moved significantly from there. And if you look at, the investment that our government are making in and effectively, I call it infrastructure. Infrastructure, it's data, it's information, it's infrastructure that's going to help. It's no different to roads or no different to telecommunications. It's infrastructure that's going to improve the efficiency, profitability, climate credentials of our suckler beef herd. And then also critically, it's doing something else. It's actually, I talked about there earlier about the, you come to Ireland, you go to the west of Ireland, these 20 cow herds, it's actually making a payment to that farmer, which is encouraging him to not only keep those suckler cows, but also keep the farm in a way that we want it, and we want it from an agri-food and a tourism perspective. And there's also a point that farmer that has his $3,000, we also know that he spent it locally, and there's a big add-on or a multiplier effect around money invested in rural parts of the country. So, and there's government reports on this. There's a 4 times multiplier effect as he then buys his grain and his feed and his fertilizer, and he spends it in the local shop, and the kids are going to school, all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
So it's very, very much an investment that has multiple benefits, and until people can start to, and then increasingly it is to move away from this traditional subsidy type view, to start to move to, this is about an investment in a very important and indigenous industry. That's what our government have seen. It's about the application of the latest technology to support, a very important indigenous industry. It's smart, it's green. That's the sort of the strap line for what we're trying to do here.
Right, fascinating, and it's very interesting. The whole Irish way of thinking about these things compared to the New Zealand way of thinking about these things, poles apart. Not saying who's right, who's wrong. That's for anyone else to judge. But yeah, very different. So it's good for us to listen to that. So just getting back a little bit more to the cattle and the power that you're going to get from genomics. So how many genotypes are you getting? Because numbers are king in our game.
Yeah. So look, the numbers of genotypes. At this stage we've genotyped up. We've done three years of genotyping. So we're up to over 1.2 million animals genotyped in the program. In that context, it's the largest livestock cattle genomics program in the world. We're genotyping about 300,000 per year. Cost of genotyping is €22. Now, again, I should make the point that, that is a cost that is deducted off the farmer's €90. So that's a cost. It's one of the actions.
Right.
We talked about the actions earlier, so that's one of the actions. And as I said, the total budget then for the 6 years of the scheme is €300 million, which is across those 24,000 farms, which is then co-funded again by our government and by the EU through the Rural Development Programme.
Yeah. So I think just, cigarette type paper calculations again, but you're probably genotyping in 1 or 2 weeks the number of animals we genotype in our program in 5 years. So it's big, it's significant. It's not to be sneezed at.
But again, I suppose, Jason, I take you back to the making of the argument as to why we needed a significant program and a significant investment. And again, it was about getting the commitment from our government, our industry, our stakeholders, and then from the EU. Because again, I keep coming back to the billions of euros that's going to be spent on climate mitigation proposals or projects over the course of the next 10 years in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's billions.
Yep.
I think I picked up a 10-year figure of, I think it's going to be $30 billion is what the Paris 2030, your target, to hit your target, if you were to hit your target, that's what it's going to cost, 30 billion New Zealand dollars.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
I think it's about making a credible case that AgFood and animals and agriculture can actually help.
Can help in
that space.
Yeah. So in terms of moving your industry forward and improving both environmental outcomes and productivity outcomes, are you measuring what you're doing? Do you know that it's working? You're a data organisation. You must be measuring and have some sort of stats around what's happening.
Everything that we like to do, has to be science-based. I mean, we're a science-based organisation. Okay?
Sure.
So we moved cattle breeding away from shows and rosettes and all that sort of stuff into science, genomics. So certainly the basis for the programme then was very much data and expectation around genetic gain based on the known biological relationships between the traits we're going to improve and the outcomes. Okay, and we know, for example, that as you increase or as you decrease cow line weight, you're going to decrease cow dry matter intake, you're going to decrease DTM output. I mean, that's just, those are some examples. And we know that by improving fertility, say, for example, we're going to increase the number of calves per cow per year. So that's going to increase our output relative to our input again. So it's by changing those traits that then you're able to model forward in terms of, well, where do you expect your industry to be in 2020 or 2025 or 2030 as a consequence of this beef genomics program. And so one of the tables I want to share with you for the forum is the performance of these cows across the 46 farms that we have as part of a validation study there with Chagas and with ICBF. So in addition to all of the data that we're collecting in any case through the beef genomics scheme, I talked about that earlier on. In addition to these 46 validation farms, we're actually out on the farms once per year. We're weighing all the cows and calves effectively at weaning time.
Yep.
And if you look at the performance, and this is part of the on-farm validation, and if we look at the 5-star cows and the table I shared with you, and there are 2,183 cows in that are 5-star, deemed 5-star, so that's top 20%. And they have an average replacement index of €130. And if we read across that top line, you can see that in terms of their lifetime CO2 equivalent, so lifetime CO2 is the cow herself and her progeny, okay?
Right, yeah.
They have a lifetime CO2 output there of about 17,000 kilos, 17,085 kilos.
Yeah.
Get into the metrics that really mean something for your farmers. Range at first calving, 860 days. An average calving interval at 375 days. An average live weight of the cows is 664 kilos with a weaning weight of 311 kilos.
Yeah. We
started this exercise in 2015, so obviously some of the progeny are now moving through into slaughter. This is the progeny carcass weight, 374 days at a carcass age of 604. Right. And if we then look at the 3-star, and maybe even look right down at the 1-star animals. So this is your bottom 20%. And these are the cows that are really costing Irish farmers, they're costing Kiwi beef farmers. 724 in that group. They've an average index of €6. So what's that telling us? It's telling us that the difference in profitability per cow per year is €136 between those 5-star cows and the 1-star cows.
Yeah.
Okay? So again, if you go back to the, and that's an annual difference there in your 20 cow herd, of almost €3,000 a year. So interestingly, if we look at the lifetime CO2 equivalent, well, you can see that these cows are actually, and their progeny, are producing an extra half a ton of CO2 equivalent in their lifetime, And where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from the fact that the 5-star cows relative to the 1-stars, there's a month's difference in age of course calving. There's an 8-day difference there in calving interval. And this is really the critical one here, Jason. It's this cow weight relative to weaning weight.
Yeah, it's quite.
So you have a cow that's 73 kilos heavier, so you're feeding her more for that extra 73 kilos, and yet she's producing a weanling that's 26 kilos later.
Yeah. That's huge.
So this is the more for less.
Yeah.
We want cows that are going to eat less but produce more, and they're going to do that in milk and fertility. And that actually then does translate through into better progeny carcass weight and slightly younger age slaughter. So certainly that validation is giving us a lot of confidence that this index is now moving us in the right direction.
Yeah, and these, just to clarify, these are commercial level animals that are recorded with these numbers, aren't they? They're not stud herds.
Absolutely.
They're not bull breeding herds.
Sucker cows.
Yeah.
And they're calves.
And so you've got good evidence now from your genomics that genomic tests can help you predict these animals?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. Certainly genomics is giving you the gains in accuracy. There's a gain in accuracy associated with genomics. But I would acknowledge, and maybe if we look at the next table and see some of the high-level improvements, I would have shared another slide there with you for the beef formula. I mean, the first one is the graph of replacement index, which is your euro profit per progeny. And then we're looking at the bottom axis, and this is the year of first calving for the replacement female. So if you take your 550,000 cows that are in the program, on average we're bringing in 100,000 replacement females per year. And I mean, the impact of this scheme is just, it's huge. You can see straight away, I mean, we've moved from 0 genetic gain for replacement index to all of a sudden we're off it. It's on average €6 per cow per year. Now, you asked the question, is genomics driving all of this gain or this change?
Sure.
I'd like to be able to say it is, and I'd like to be able to say genetics is, but the reality of it is, if you look at the next two tables there, Jason, calves per cow per year has gone from 0.8 to 0.87, calving into, and these are high level. So I talked earlier on about 1 million cows, 800,000 calves. I mean, it's not it's not something to be proud of.
No.
But already we've moved to 0.87.
Yeah.
Calving interval 407 to 393. Calving at 2 years is moving in the right direction. One that we need to do more work on as part of a future focus.
Sure. Yeah.
But just even taking the calves per cow per year, that's another 70,000 calves in the system. And if we look at the carcass weights, what's happened in terms of these are progeny carcass weights from our suckler here. Again, they're increasing, no loss in confirmation, but interestingly, age at slaughter has come down by 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So is that all due to genetics or genomics? No, it's not. But what the scheme is bringing, it's certainly confidence in tools, in technology, in the opportunity to improve these key metrics. And I put it down to, it's that combination of the industry coming together, it's the knowledge transfer programs, it's the use of the latest technology, which is all driving the change.
Yeah.
And it's way above what we would have predicted or anticipated, just down to genetics or genomics. But that's a positive. As geneticists, we never claim that, it's all down to genetics. Of course, it's down to, it's down to management, it's down to the environment, it's down to lots of other factors. But if you can start to get the genetics right,
Yep.
which we're clearly doing, and get the programs in place that allow benchmarking, and then you can start to make really significant improvements.
Yeah, there's nothing like measuring some performance to make you focus on how you manage it.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of the whole program has been, a statement at the very start with the farmer: this is where you're at, and these are the challenges that you're going to face, and this is where we want to get you to.
Yeah.
And if we look at it in a broad sense, look, and we've been able to model this through to 2030, the sort of overall industry gain figures are, we're looking at a profitability gain of, it's in the order of 600 million euros.
Right.
A reduction in, and this is a really, really critical one, a reduction in greenhouse gas output, CO2 equivalent output per cow by 6 to 7%.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't sound huge, but in the overall context, it's and one thing again our government has realised, it's about getting small wins in lots of areas.
Right.
And I think this is a really, really key one because, and there's an important point here as well, which is we've moved the discussion beyond this whole carbon intensity to one around making a commitment that no, we can actually breed cows that will produce less carbon.
Yeah. And just finally, so a lot of measurement happening in your commercial level. You're using genomics in your commercial level. What do your bull breeders think of all this? What's the implications for your bull breeders?
We could spend another 20 minutes on that, Jason, because look, now we're buying into the biggest challenge we face.
Right.
In many ways. You keep moving the challenge along. So the challenge now has moved to one of having demonstrated the benefits of the change and having in many ways lit a fire amongst the commercial suckler beef men, the cow-calf men as you call them. Now they're looking around they want the better genetics, from the bull breeders.
Yeah.
The challenge for our bull breeders, and I guess no different to any breeding country that I've visited, bull breeders typically are still caught up in the visual traits, the growth, the output traits.
Right.
By and large are. And so there's quite a lot of challenges then around really trying to get those guys engaged and start to focus and use technology such as genetics, genomics, to focus on the traits that are hard to measure or you can't see, which we need to improve in the context of this whole climate and environment discussion. So that's a big challenge. Like, the best of them are responding, but we really need to try and engage and get more responding if we want, because that's what the opportunity now is. It's about accelerating genetic gain. We have to accelerate it.
Yeah.
But to do that, we need to get those bull breeders fully engaged, and that's where quite a bit of our time and focus and energy is on at the moment.
Sure. And so by going in on that commercial level, by measuring, monitoring, getting that data sort of going at the commercial level, I imagine you're changing the market for those bulls somewhat, and there's nothing that bull breeders like to do more than sell bulls. So, as we all like to make money in life, so
that's exactly it, and that's what's happening. And the challenge is with a program like this, I guess, in many ways, maybe one, they didn't anticipate it happening, and then they didn't anticipate the success or the uptake to be so rapid. Because in fairness to bull breeders, they need a few years to change what's happening, within their herds as well.
Yep.
I mean, they have a team of bulls for sale next year that were bred 3 years ago.
Sure.
And that's the challenge. And but look, they're responding.
Great.
But our job is to get more of them to respond and to respond more quickly, and because that's how we generate gain.
Yeah.
25, but I mean, in fairness, about 25% of the calves in Ireland in the commercial suckler beef herd would be AI bred, but still the vast majority of them are coming through breeding bulls.
Yeah. So Andrew, I'll just that's been a fascinating insight to to what's happening over there in Ireland, and there's a lot we can learn, I think, in New Zealand from that. But just as a final question, you've been to New Zealand a little bit. I know I've seen you here a couple of times recently, so you know a little bit about our industry and about our systems. What do you think our challenges are from your perspective?
I mean, look, in many ways they're quite similar to the challenges. I mean, our industries are very, very similar. You know, they're seasonal. Obviously agriculture in New Zealand, like in Ireland, makes a big part of that CO2 output for your entire New Zealand industry. And the challenge that you'll face is, you know, in the discussions that are now happening, and there's lots of positive discussions around climate and action and mitigation strategies. I think that the biggest challenge that you'll face is can you engender the sort of government/industry support for to start to channel some of those investments in terms of the projects that are going to be invested into agriculture. You know what I mean? Into animal agriculture. Of course, there'll be money going into deforestation and initiatives like that. But can you actually encourage them to invest into, you know, animal-based agriculture? To not see the animals as just a dead duck. I mean, we can't do anything with them. They're there. All we can do is try and put a cap on them, stop the numbers expanding. You know, these are the challenges. And some people will take a view, we need to cull, we need to drop them, get rid of cows, we need to, you know, these will be the strategies that some people will be putting forward.
So there's a very unique situation in Ireland, and the ICBF is an example of that. It's government and it's industry, and it's coming together and achieving something. What would you recommend for our industry from your observations and learnings from your situation, Andrew?
I mean, look. I mean, if I look back at the challenges that we would have faced I think you have to, first of all, you have to start to talk in the language that the people that are you know, making decisions around these projects understand. And it is now about climate and it's about environment. So you need to focus on the opportunities that agriculture, and particularly animal agriculture, present in the context of, you know, climate efficiency.
Sure.
And you need to be able to make the argument that, you know, having cows, having sheep throughout rural New Zealand is good. It's good in so many ways. It's good for agri-food. It's good for tourism. It's good for natural habitats. And that your goal then in achieving that is to make sure that you're building systems and have breeding programs to have the most climate efficient animals that are going to be in the system. And about understanding that the discussion is really all now about climate efficiency, but also appreciating, don't be afraid to have that discussion, because those climate efficient animals, in our experience, are also the most profitable animals.
Sure. So thanks very much, Andrew, for your time. Really appreciate you Skyping in from Ireland tonight and sharing with us your experience in a very different situation, but giving us a lot of food for thought, particularly around climate change, but also the fact that we can have our cake and eat it, and that our animals can be climate efficient, and they can be more productive as well. So appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you some other time in New Zealand, or perhaps back here now.
Sure.
Okay.